Last week, we started a series on a book, a really old book by a really brilliant man who wrote the Chronicles of Narnia. Everybody familiar with the Chronicles of Narnia? Maybe you've seen the films, read the books. So the man's name is C.S. Lewis. He's really brilliant. And I was like, oh, I love the Chronicles of Narnia. I'll read Mere Christianity, another book that he wrote. And I read the first paragraph like 9 times. And I go, what is he saying? He is just so smart. And the way that he works things, it's old. He's an older writer, and people used to write in ways that, long sentences where you got to tie in the end of the sentence to the thought that there was before, instead of we just like tweet things and everything's 144 characters or less, or 4 emojis and 1 word, and we get it. So when you have to read real words by an intelligent person, maybe our minds are devolving and we're getting dumber as we move along. But that's entirely a different subject. But anyhow, he wrote these satirical letters called the Screwtape letters. And what they did is they published them in a newspaper, like 1 a week. And he wrote these as satire. He wrote them that from the position of the enemy, from the position of the good guys, which are the bad guys, Satan and his minions, through 2 specific demons, Wormwood and Uncle Screwtape. And it's the conversation that they have, because each demon in this satire is connected to their own patient, a person. And what I hope to highlight in these Screwtape letters is how sneaky. The Bible says that the devil, he prowls around like a roaring lion. And I talked about this last week. A lion doesn't go to a bunch of zebras and go, roar, come get in my belly. He just doesn't do that. Because they go out and hunt. When it comes to lionesses, it's lioness. But they prowl and they sneak and they lay in wait for a long time, looking for their moment, looking for the weakness, looking for the weak one, and where they're going to jump in. And so these Screwtape letters, C.S. Lewis so brilliantly penned these. He wrote these letters as a way to show how brilliant the enemy is at twisting who we are, what we do, the little things that we don't even understand about how we talk to other people, the things that we do, our motives behind the things that we do. He uses those things to turn other people off. Because why? The Bible says that you'll know God's people by how they love one another. And Satan is trying to do everything else, everything in his book, to get people to not love one another. And really, it says he's the prince of this world. And if you look around, if you look on Facebook, he's doing a pretty good job, right, at getting people to not love. It's not up here. One another. Good. He's doing a good job at getting us to not love one another because of the way he twists things and the way that he gets into our mind and allows us to see things that are not really there. They're not truth of the person we're relating to. And we're going to jump into one of the Screwtape letters this week, and it was letter number 3. We emailed those out a little later in the week, Thursday, I think, and you guys got those. Hopefully you had a chance, but if not, I'm going to read short portions of it, so I'll be able to tie it in anyways. So we're going to take this satirical look at how Satan works, and it should be very insightful to us. But before we get going, I wanted to say this. The Bible says in Ephesians 6:12, says, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against rulers and against authorities, against powers of the dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realm." So I want to just boil that down and say it this way. It's really short, okay? I'm going to say it really in a way that we can understand. There's no emojis, so they're not going to be on the screen, but it's going to be really simple and really short. If it's flesh and blood, we fight for it. Okay? If it's flesh and blood, we fight for it. Your boss. Is your boss flesh and blood? Yeah. You ever wanted to fight with your boss? If we see our boss as flesh and blood, we fight what? For it. Your spouse. Is your spouse flesh and blood? We fight what? For our spouse. Your children. Are your children flesh and blood? We fight what? Your neighbor, your coworker, that guy who posts every time. He's like your Facebook friend, and you've tried to get rid of him, but he always posts the antithesis of what you put online. Is he flesh and blood? Yes. Is that liberal across the street that Are they flesh and blood? Is that conservative across the street, are they flesh and blood? Is Donald Trump flesh and what? Blood. Is Hillary Clinton flesh and blood? Is, I got an eh. For those of you online, we got an eh. Okay, so we know where. So Hillary Clinton, I'm going to tell you, she's flesh and blood. We fight for what? Flesh and blood. We, Jesus followers, don't fight against flesh and blood. We fight for it. Because there are powers and principalities at work, and I hope to highlight those. Because it's so easy to know it here. Oh yeah, I know it's a battle. I know that battle's going on in here, and I should be nice to that person, but they did that thing, and I want to get them with this because it's so good. We don't fight flesh and blood. We fight for flesh and blood. So C.S. Lewis points out a few things. I want to talk about them. It's not the easiest of reads, but I think it's going to be very eye-opening. So stay with me, and I'll try to point these out. I fortunately have had the opportunity of reading them multiple times. So as we get into the Screwtape letters, there's Uncle Screwtape, and he's the one writing all these letters to his nephew Wormwood. So there's some connotation in there, and if you understand that there's wormwood, it's in the Bible. Okay, so anyhow, but it doesn't matter for what we're talking about today. So there's Uncle Screwtape, and he's trying to mentor his nephew Wormwood in how to tweak a patient, how to get a patient, you, me, all these flesh and bloods on this earth, to annoy the heck out of each other so that we will destroy the heck out of each other. Okay? That's their job, to drive a wedge in, to put a thought in, to do those things. So Wormwood is doing this. So we're going to jump into the third Screwtape letter, and it says this from Uncle Wormwood. I am very pleased by what you tell me about this man's relationship with his mother. But you must press your advantage. The enemy, and the enemy in this is God, the enemy. The enemy will be working from the center outward, gradually bringing more and more of the patient, you, me, all of us who are Christ followers, the patient's conduct under a new standard. I put in parentheses there in mine. It's not in yours. I put it in love. The new standard is love. God is love. The new standard is love. And God, when he plants himself in the center of your life, he is going to outwardly begin to change you and shape you into more of a loving creature. So he says this, he's going to bring more and more of the patient's conduct under the new standard, the new banner, and this banner is love. And may reach his behavior to the old lady at any moment. So he's saying, right now, there's some strife between mom and son. And as God the enemy begins working in his life, you never know when this love in his life might actually reach said mom in the home where they live. So you've got to be aware of this, and we got to get a jump on this before that actually happens. It may reach his behavior of the old lady at any moment. You want to get in first. Keep in close touch with our colleague, Glubos, another demon, his mom's demon, who is in charge of the mother. And build up between you and that house a good, settled habit of mutual annoyance and daily pinpricks. Have you ever been in relationship with somebody that you're supposed to love, and it feels like every time you get into a conversation with them, it's daily annoyances and daily pinpricks? It may be a brother, it may be a brother-in-law, it might be a mother, it might be a father, it might be a spouse, it might be your kid who doesn't know anything, but man, they think they know everything, and they just tell you, it's just happening. And it says, and build up between you in that house a good, settled habit of mutual annoyance and daily pinpricks. Does that sound like life to you? Life with other people? Just daily pinpricks. Daily pinpricks. The following methods are useful. Keep his mind on the inner life. He thinks his conversion is something inside him, and his attention is therefore chiefly tuned at present to the states of his own mind, or rather to that very expurgated version of them, which is all you should allow him to see, that distant part of him, the part of him who he thinks he is, but really isn't on the outside. You should, to allow him that he see. Okay, so 3. Encourage this. keep his mind off the most elementary duties by directing it to the most advanced and spiritual ones. I was just talking with my friend here before church, and it says there's all these things that we made like in church. These are really important. You know, things like you got to wear a suit, or you got to do that thing, or you got to say that word, or address your friend as brother, or whatever it is. Whatever these things are, we make all these things important. But the reality is, the thing that we're supposed to do in church is love one another. We're supposed to love one another. We're supposed to get to know each other. And what he's saying is keep his mind off of the love one another, the practical thing, the thing that battles against the daily pinpricks and the distance of our heart. And keep it focused on those things that are way out, the ethereal, spiritual being that we are in our own minds, but actually doesn't reach the practice of who we are. So he's saying, work on that. Aggravate the most useful human characteristics. The horror and neglect of the obvious. You must bring him to a condition in which he can practice self-examination for an hour without discovering any of those facts about himself, which are perfectly clear to anyone who has ever lived in the same house with him or worked in the same office. Make him totally oblivious. Have you ever met somebody who's totally oblivious to how much of a jerk they are? Have you? Have you ever met somebody and you go, man, they think they're awesome? And you're all looking at me. I'm feeling a little self-conscious right now. They think they're awesome, but they're a jerk. And they don't even know it. See, the slight difference or sometimes chasm between the way we are, how others view us, and the way we see ourselves. See, this inner man who is struggling to do and say all the right things, there's just sometimes a chasm of who we think we are, how other people should perceive us, because we perceive ourselves as a nice thing. We say these things and we go, man, that was really good for me. I said that in a nice way. And on the other side, everybody else is going, how rude. How could those words even come across? That's a 3-year-old you said that to. How could you even say that? And what he's talking about is that introspection. Keep him so focused on God and these things that are so spiritual and these ideas of grace and mercy. He could focus on that and pray on that in these moments and feel so good when he's worshiping God, his grace and his mercy, and I can be this kind person. The first thing he does yell at his kids is when they get in the car on the way home. And those two ideas and truths are so distant from one another that people do not even realize how broken, how rude, how much of an annoyance they can be to other people. He's saying, use that to your advantage. Use it in the home. Use it in the relationship between husband and wife, parent and child, brother and sister, in-laws. I mean, it's easy to get in the in-law one, right? I mean, you didn't grow up with them. There ain't no love there yet, and there may be any like. There may never be any love, and maybe no like at all either. It's easy to get in there. A coworker, right? And some of you want to leave your job just because that other person is there. See, daily pinpricks. See, the who we are is what God, the enemy, is after. God wants that person who we think we are or should be. In those moments where we say, God, I want to be so merciful and gracious. I want to love. I want to serve. I want to be a servant. I want to show kindness. I want to do those things. And then the first thing that happens as soon as spouse comes in the door, man, did you get the milk? Did you? It's like, oh, really? See, God wants to bring those two things together, because when that idea of who you think you are, that image of God, who you could possibly be, becomes the reality of who you are, it's when you actually begin to show love and God's kindness in his reflection. That's what the enemy's after. When he plants himself in the center of your life, that is what he's after in transforming you bit by bit. There's this big word called sanctification. It means bit by bit, process. Our t-shirts say people in process. Why? Because I'm not all there yet, but I'm on my way. And I want us to be very, very aware of where we don't live up. That is, in those moments of introspection, we go, oh man, and it's really good when you're in a community like this. You can look at other people, and outwardly you may not say it, but inwardly you may say, you know what, they love so well. I gotta look at my mom. She's older than I am. I won't say how old she is, but she's older than I am. And I swear she has more energy than I do. I swear she does she gets done twice as much as I do in the same amount of time, and she still has time to get on the floor and play with my kids and love all over these little ones. And I go, where does that come from? See, that is the process of God starting at the selfish center of who we are and bit by bit changing us. And I can look at my mom and go, I want to be like that. And I can look at Kelly and I go, man, she just has this infectious smile. And when she gets around, man, she just opens her life up. She's so transparent to people of who she is and where she is. And I go, I want to be like that. In this community that we have, it's mutually transformative. That's another message for another day. But we get to see the gifts of God in each other. And we get to say, I want to be like that because that looks like Jesus. And I'm not a lot like that, but that's where I'm headed. And Jesus starts at that center point, and he begins working himself out in your own peculiarities and your own annoyances. And it's hard to turn those things over because, you know what? I like my sarcastic tongue. I do. Some of you it connects with. I've made friends because of my sarcasm, and I'm sure I've made some enemies because of my sarcasm. I'm just saying, there's things that God's working on me. There's things that he's working on you, and he starts from the center, and he works his way out. How does he work? Bit by bit. See, there's this sneaky trick that Wormwood will play where we judge ourselves by how we intended to be, and we judge other people by how they are. We judge ourselves on our intentions, right? I didn't mean to do that. And I mean, if you say you don't do that, I mean, that's your argument when you get called out on it. Well, that's not what I meant. You ever said that? That's not what I meant when I said you were an idiot, jerk-faced person. I meant you're my friend. I just said that like a joke, right? No, you're a jerk. And you said that, and you meant that. See, we judge other people by how they are, and we judge ourselves by how we intended to be. And that's the distance between who God is, who we are, and who God is transforming us into. And Wormwood would get in there. The demon, our adversary would get in there and say, no, those two are the same. No, you're the same person. There's no distance between who you think you are, who you would like to be, and who you actually are. And all he has to do is get in there and say, no, that's who you are. People just don't understand you. I just don't get you. It's their bad, not yours. No, keep saying those things, right? No, I'm just totally kind. It's okay if you use those words that are not totally kind. People just don't get you. And he digs his way in there. He says, get in there and create annoyances and daily pinpricks. Just make it a habit. And the reality is, if you are truthful, like me, there are things that we do that annoy people in this room. Things that I do. Probably done them already this morning. And because you're grace-filled and you love me and you feel bad for my wife, you keep coming around. So you know what? We're not going to leave you in this thing alone, Jeremy. We're going to surround your wife with all the love and support that she needs. We're going to do this thing together. So this is very important that we get this. The distance between our actions and our thoughts can be miles apart. And that distance is what makes all the difference. We have to start understanding where the devil gets in, where the adversary gets in, and he begins to do in our relationships these little tiny annoyances. See, we take our lives and we map this idea of who we would like to be onto who we actually are. So from the inside looking out, we look like $1 million. From the outside looking in, sometimes we're not so cool. You're not all that cool. I'll tell you. I might be the first person to tell you. That might be me being a jerk right now, but you're not all that cool. I love you. I like you. God loves you and accepts you, and I accept you, and we're part of this thing, but I'm not all that cool. I mess up, and when I mess up, I need your grace, and I need your mercy. I need you to continue on with me as I change bit by bit as a people in process, just as you need me to stick it out with you as you're a people in process. And when you're a jerk, I say grace and mercy, because we fight for what? Flesh and blood. We fight for flesh and blood. See, we need to be honest with ourselves about who and how we actually are. You want to know how you actually are? I have 2 steps. Ask somebody close to you. On. 3 steps. I screwed up. You got to forgive me. 1. Ask somebody close to you. Step 2. Shut up. 3. Listen. You want to know where you screw up regularly? You want to know what the little annoyances and pinpricks are? Find somebody that you love, who you know knows you, who you trust to have your best interest at heart, who you know has gone mile after mile with you, believes in you, and just has been a friend, has would be there when your back was against the wall. Ask that person. Ask someone close. This is the important part. Shut up and listen. And that's where the wrestle comes. Because when you ask, you give license, you give an opening for somebody to be truly honest with you. And honesty from a friend is like gold. Because a friend loves you, a friend wants you to get better, a friend wants you to not be a pinprick, an annoyance. They want you to be who God is calling you to be, and they know you the best. Ask someone close, shut up, and listen. And that's where you have a way, that bit of information that you get is something you take to God. You say, God, is this true? It's been illuminated in my life. How do I deal with this? What do I do going forward? This is not of you. It's not a way that you would want me to be. And that's where the battle begins. So this is the battleground that Wormwood and Glubos will pour fire on in an effort to destroy relationships. The enemy, our adversary, he will work on you and your partner, your friend, your coworker, do these little things. You just continue to annoy each other until it turns into full-fledged war. Why? Because ultimately the enemy's goal is what? It's a big D word. Destruction. He wants to destroy your lives in every life that you come in contact with. Destruction. Destruction of marriages, friendship, family relationships, relationships with sons and daughters and parents and all of those things. That is the goal of the enemy of our soul. I want to move on. Matthew 7, 1 through 5 says this. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with that measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take that speck out of your eye, when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. What is Jesus saying here? We don't fight with flesh and blood. We don't try to call out everybody else. We deal with the things that are about us. So we do what? Ask someone close. What's the next one? Shut up and listen, because there's a plank in your eye. And when you get the plank out, and oftentimes that plank is very similar to the one in the other person's eye, because we see the flaws in other people that we have in our own lives that we are not able to admit to ourselves. It's so easy to see in other people where we fall short. I don't know why. It's a condition of our brokenness. So we'll jump back in. There's another point I want to point out before we end this morning. So we jump back in and it says, when two humans have lived together for many years, it usually happens that each has tones of voice and expressions of face which are almost unendurably irritating to the other. Work on that. Work on that. There are faces that you make. There are tones of voice. There are little things that outside looking in, people wouldn't understand in your relationship with your spouse, a coworker, a little dig that you get in. It's an inside joke that you get in there. And the reality is that person knows that you're doing it. Nobody else would know from the outside. And it says to the demon, Wormwood, work on that. Work on that. Why? Because it's a wedge. It may not hurt so much when a wedge starts going into a split in a log, but the more you hammer that thing in, it what? It separates the log. It splits it in half. Or if you're really cool, you got a pneumatic log splitter, man, and you just push a button and it goes, it splits a log for you. Learned that in Arkansas when I had to burn wood to keep warm because they don't even have gas out there. It's crazy. He says, work on that. Bring fully into the consciousness of your patient that particular lift of his mother's eyebrow, which he learned to dislike in the nursery, and let him think how much he dislikes it. Let him assume that she knows how annoying it is and does it to annoy him. If you know your job, he will not notice. If you know your job, he will not notice the immense improbability of that assumption. And, of course, never let him suspect that he has tones and looks which similarly annoy her. As he cannot see or hear himself, this is easily manageable. In civilized life, domestic hatred usually expresses itself by saying things which would appear quite harmless on paper. The words are not offensive, but in such a voice or at such a moment that they are not far short of a blow to the face. To keep this game up, you and Glubos must see to it that each of these two fools has a sort of double standard. Your patient must demand that all his own utterances are to be taken at their face value and judged simply on the actual words, while at the same time judging all his mother's utterances with the fullest and most oversensitive interpretation of the tone and the context, the suspected intention. She must be encouraged to do the same to him. Hence, from every quarrel, they can both go away convinced, or very nearly convinced, that they are quite innocent. You know the kind of thing. I simply ask her what time dinner will be, and she flies into a temper. Once this habit is well established, you have the delightful situation of a human saying things with the express purpose of offending and yet having a grievance when offense is taken. Say it in a tone. Lift that eyebrow. Do that. If you're married, you know how this works. If you're married, you know how this works. The most innocuous thing. You ever been at somebody's house when maybe you were there on time for dinner and the husband forgot or worked late and mom's been like juggling, trying to stall for said husband to come home, and then as soon as he gets in the door, I don't know, I'm picking on women, sorry. As soon as he gets in the door, you just hear some words come out. Oh, hi, honey. How was your day? And it just sends him in. It's like you can just see red come over his face. Because you know it's that lifted eyebrow, the tone of voice, that thing that we can do that causes grievance on the other. And the reality is we think, oh, I didn't do anything. I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that. So for many years, I'm going to open myself up. And Jeannie and my life, we're going to tell some of our story. Anyways, our story. For many years, this one really reared its ugly head in my marriage. So Janie, she had a life before me. I mean, not really. I robbed the cradle pretty early, but anyhow, I had to shape her into what I wanted. You can't just. That was for you. That was for you, ladies back there. But for years, if there's a relationship, there's what? There's conflict, right? And two people get together, it's never easy. Marriage is not easy. Half of them end in divorce. And then 80% of the second marriage ends in divorce. And then like 90% of a third marriage end in divorce. Why? Because marriage is not easy. It's what? It's hard. It's work. And when two people know each other so well, it's exactly, when I read this, I was like, I'm on an airplane reading these Screwtape letters, and I'm going, this is so true. This is brilliance, what he's writing here. This is how the enemy works. So for years, if there was anything, a situation that I would have to bring up, one, finances. Janie told me early on, I want you to handle all the finances because I'm not good at it, and I don't want to stress me out. Done. But because I handled all those finances and money isn't always in abundance, right? Are you guys with me? Then sometimes things get tight. Well, she doesn't know things are tight because I don't want to what? Stress her out. So when I would have a question, babe, why did you spend $47 at the 99-cent store when you said you were going to get some rubbing alcohol? It's 99 cents. Why? Somewhere in there was a tone, a lifted eyebrow, a something, and every single time I had to bring something up about money, there was this tone, and you're trying to tell me, and oh man, that's not my heart. I'm just trying to take care of our budget, our finances. I'm trying to make sure that the lights stay on. I'm trying to make sure that there's still hot water in the home, there's food in the refrigerator, and we didn't need 94 coloring books for our kids to make more trash that we can fight about on our living room floor. But there was a tone in there. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what the quirk was about, the way that I said it, the thing that I did, but immediately, boom, what'd she do? I'm done with this conversation. And that irritated the heck out of me because my mom would do that. When I would get into an argument or something growing up with my mom, she would say, I'm not talking about this anymore. And for me, that was, I just won. Not me. She won. And I was like, no, no, no. We're having this conversation. And we're having this conversation now because this needs to be dealt with, right? So in my relationship with my wife, my tone, if I ever tried to show her a different way, I remember trying to show her how to cut an onion because I watched her just fiddle with this thing for a long time. I like to cook. I cut onions, dice onions. I was like, there's an easier way to do that. You don't have to cry so much. And I just want to show her, if you'll just cut it this way, and immediately she's like, I don't need you to teach me how to do that. And I'm like, I did something wrong. I know I did. And I'm sure she could get up here and tell you the same stories, the things that I do. I try to live an open book life for you guys to show you that it's not all easy. It's hard. And the more that we can realize these things about ourselves, the more that we can work on and change and make that person we want to be, the one that we think we are, we can make that a reality if we allow those two to come together. But we have to be honest, and we have to see us for who we really are. And a good way to do that is to do what? Ask a good friend, shut up, and listen. It's hard work. It's hard work. It's hard work when we get called out on our stuff, and how we're broken, and how we do things to break the very relationships that we want to hold so tightly onto. And we're doing things that we don't even know that are just pushing the wedge in deeper and deeper and deeper. That's why I want to talk about this today. See, I would get irritated with Janie when she was just dismissive. I'd be like, did you have to spend 40 cents? Well, I did. That's it. It's done. And she would be done with the conversation. I'd be like, no, I need you to know that we can't just do that again tomorrow or the lights aren't going to stay on. Okay? I need more than that. But it came down to this. And this happened in the last couple of years. I was doing things that put me in polar opposition to her. And she saw me as the enemy, and I had to convince her, I had to say to her, I had to ask for her to forgive me and say, babe, I'm for you. I'm for you. I married you because I'm for you. I love you. I believe in you. You're the one who I want to be the mother of my children. You are, but I want you to continue to be that person. I don't want to take them away from you and find someone else to be the mother. I want you. You're their mom. You're the one I want them to learn from. I want to continue loving you forever, and that's why I have to have this conversation with you. I had to convince her that I was for her and for us and realize that there were things that I did, and I worked hard not to do those things, but she had to. It took years. Tell me what those things were. Like, I didn't even know. Like, there was just this wedge being driven in for years. And it's hard once a wedge is getting in. Have you ever split wood and got a wedge halfway in and couldn't get it through for some reason because it was below, like, where the wood was? And it's doggone difficult to get it out. It's near impossible. You just want to throw the whole log on the fire and say, you know what? When it all burns up, the wedge will come out. But you can't do that in life. You can't just say, you know, I'm going to throw this whole fire on the relationship on the fire, let it burn up, the wedge will come out. Because by then, it'll be destroyed. And I was doing things that destroyed our relationship. She was doing things. Why? Because there's an enemy of our soul. There's an adversary who wants to create a world of daily pinpricks and annoyances toward one another so that we cannot love one another. There are people in this room who you have political differences with. The reality is, doesn't matter because we love Jesus and Jesus is ultimate. And we then, because Jesus said, love me, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and love your neighbor as yourself. Those are the two things we got to work on. Because we love one another. Because he first loved us. See, one of our core values is we are for what? Yeah, there it is. Cheaters, you're looking behind me. We're for what we're for. Why? Why do we say that? Why is that one up there? It sounds weird and it doesn't make sense all the time. But the reality is, if we're for what we're for, we're not against anything, right? Jesus didn't come to be against anything. He came to be for something. Life change, salvation. And if we, out of our mouth, and the way that we live our lives is in opposition to everything else in this world, then we're not for what we're for. And we are for love, and we are for reparation, and we are for reconciliation, and we are for sanctification, and we are for love. That's what we're for. We're for love, and we're for flesh and blood. So I've got some questions for you. And I want you to think about this. Because from this, you may have to have a conversation where you ask a question, you shut up, and you what? You listen. With whom? I got that right. With whom do you have the most conflict in your life? With whom do you have the most conflict in your life? Do any of these scenarios that we've talked, do either scenario play a part in that conflict with that person? Look at yourself. Maybe ask that person, are there things that I do that annoy you? You already know. Because those are what we call buttons that you push. And we push buttons intentionally. You don't push buttons on accident, you do it on purpose. We get really good at reading people and knowing how to push their buttons and when to push them. I do it with Amanda all the time. That's why she's like a little sister to me. I just push her buttons, and it's fun. Just sit back and watch. Because I know she loves me and I love her. We're going to laugh about it later, but it's fun just to spin her up a little bit. And I'm a bad person. I need sanctification. With whom do you have the most conflict in your life? Maybe you need to have a hard conversation with that person. Do these scenarios play a part? Who are you judging in their actions and not on the intent or the desire of their heart? How can you help draw out the desire of their heart and the good intentions, that idea of who they are? That's who we're supposed to be as peacemakers. I'm supposed to see you through God's eyes, the best in you, and I'm supposed to speak life into that, and I'm supposed to draw that out of you. After we've been in a relationship for a while, you should be closer to Jesus Christ and following him than you were when we met. If I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, because I fight for what? Flesh and blood. I fight for you. And I see the unique giftings that I see in you, and I speak life to those things, because oftentimes we don't see those things in ourselves. Have you ever had somebody tell you, man, I see this in your life, but you're really good at this, and I suck at it? See, God put us all together with the things that we suck at, and he put somebody else in our lives, in this church, in this body, who's good at something else. Why? Because together we look really beautiful. Individually, we're messed up people. But somehow the church of Jesus Christ, when we love people well, and we fight for flesh and blood, not against flesh and blood, we look really beautiful to people out there who are lost and in darkness. We fight for flesh and blood. Who are you judging on their actions and not on their intent or their desire? Speak life into their intent and their desire. And what things do you do that sends someone close to you over the edge? What do you do with your spouse? What is it that you do with a son? What is it you do with a brother-in-law? What is it that you do? Take responsibility for your actions. And then don't just stop doing those things. Flip it on its head. There's this, I'll tell you this real quick. I'm a little bit over, but I'll tell you this real quick. There's a girl at work. She was a manager. She fills in when my boss has his days off. And man, she came back there, just ruled with an iron fist. She's mean to everybody, all of us. And I wanted to battle what? Flesh and blood. Like, oh, really? Oh, we'll show you how it is. Oh, you want work done? Oh, sorry. We'll just take our time, because who gets stuck with it at the end of the night? And when the job's not done, who gets in trouble? Not us, but you. I wanted to go that route, and I told my boss when she started doing this, I said, here's what I want to do. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to win her. So I've done more things for that woman than I've done for my boss who I already like. Why? Because it's us who have to go into dark places and shine the light of Jesus Christ and do tangible things in ways that just blow people's mind. Why did I bring her in a Starbucks drink? I hate Starbucks and I hate paying for overpriced coffee and tea. But what did that girl like? Because before I went into work last week, I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm giving you an idea. Okay? Before I went into work, I texted another person who knows her. Said, "What kind of drink does she like?" Because when I go in today, I'm walking in with a drink and I want to say, "Man, we're going to have a good day. And I'm glad that you're here." Why? Because it changes things when we show the love of Jesus Christ in dark places. What things do you do that send people over edge? Don't just stop doing those, but go above and beyond. Go the extra mile. So I want you to have at least one conversation this week with somebody who you know there are mutual annoyances and pinpricks with. There's somebody, and when we take the position of humility, we say, "I'm sorry that I'm this way, but I want to be better at this because I value you and I value us. And this is the way it's going to be going forward. I'm probably going to mess up, but it's not in my intention that I mess up. Help me be this person going forward. Help me not be a jerk. And tell me if it's that eyebrow that annoys you, let me know. I'll shave it off. If I come in with a shaved off eyebrow, you guys are going to know that it really annoys Janie. I'm not shaving it off, babe. Maybe just short, because the older I get, the longer they get. Like all squirrely. It's like hair comes out. That's a side note. Okay. Maybe you have to have a hard conversation with yourself. Ask yourself, do I judge people secretly? Do I harbor resentment? Why? Because the enemy of our soul, the adversary, sneaks around like a devil, waiting to see who he can devour. And he will eat you up before you know it. And he'll eat up those around you. Bow your heads, please. Jesus, I thank you for your word. I thank you that your word brings light and illumination to this condition we call life, this brokenness we find ourselves in, this process that we find ourselves in. Let us have the courage, God, to have hard conversations with people and the humility to throw ourselves on the altar of friendship, on the altar of what's right, on the altar of grace and mercy and humility. And do the hard work, the really hard work of admitting I'm wrong. I'm wrong. Let us have the courage and the humility to do the hard work in the relationships that are closest to us, that we would look more and more like you. I ask that we wouldn't just be hearers of your word, but we would be doers in this. We would have the conversation, that we would do the hard work, and that you would be glorified in and through our lives. We ask these things in your name. Amen.